Hey, Queenie. So here we are. I am in the Queen room, of course. And as you know, a couple of months ago, I did an unboxing of a really cool book that came out, a Queen and Freddie Mercury anthology called In the Lap of the Gods. And we are very, very privileged today to have its editor, David Geldard, on live with me from the UK to chat a little bit about this book. So, welcome, David. Thank you for joining me on my channel today.
Thanks for having me, Angie.
Oh, yay. I'm so excited. I'm excited to talk to you about this book because when I heard about it, I thought it was really great that you were able to get stories from not only Queen fans, but from people that have actually like knew Freddie, knew the band, and you got some kind of heavy hitters in the book. So what I want to know from you is where did your Queen journey start and what gave you the idea to put together a bunch of Queen fans and stories into a book?
My Queen journey, as I say in the book, I can't really say when it began because I remember them from being a toddler. My mum and dad, particularly my dad, was really into them. I can't remember if you ask me when did you first hear Queen. It's like when did you first hear the song "Happy Birthday." It's
Right.
always been there. And I definitely remember that my dad had Bohemian Rhapsody when it came out on a 7-inch single. My mum remembers when I first heard Queen. I don't. I was on her knee, a few months old, listening to Killer Queen in the back of my granddad's car. There you go. But I grew up with Queen, and around the age of 11, you sort of get more into music, and the kids at school and my cousins were into like Duran Duran and Ultravox and Depeche Mode and all them sort of bands.
All
And
amazing bands, by the way, all amazing
yeah,
bands.
yeah.
Go ahead.
And I got into all those, and I was very excited around the time of Band Aid, getting
Yes.
more drawn into that sort of music. And then Live Aid came on, and there was just something about that performance. And from that day on, I became obsessed with Queen because they blew. It's something of a cliche now, but they blew everyone off
Yeah.
stage. And if you look at Freddie when he walks on stage at Wembley, his charisma and the joy in his face, he's like he's loving every minute of it,
Yes.
and that just captured me. And from then on, my uncle Alan's a really big Queen fan as well, and I can't believe this now looking back. But at like 11, 12 years old, I just phoned him up and said, "Can I borrow your entire Queen vinyl collection?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." There's no way I'd ever let anyone borrow my Queen vinyl now. So,
Right.
fair play
Well,
to
and
him.
what year, what time was that? Like, how many albums were out at that time? When was that, in the 80,
We
85, or
was
was
up to, yeah, we was up to the works. And then the
okay.
first one that I bought with my own money was A Kind of Magic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. So what made you decide to, like, just gather a lot of Queen fans together to do a book about it?
It's born out of a website that Jay Jay Jen, she started this website years ago, We Are Cult, which you can go on now. It's still up and running. Um, I think it started really with a lot of Doctor Who fans, of which I'm one. And they all had extended interest in the arts, different bands,
Mhm,
cult films, that kind of thing. And then when David Bowie died around about, I think it was 2016,
mhm.
Jay put together a similar kind of book called Me and the Starman. And I
Oh,
contributed an essay to that, and all the profits from that go to cancer research in memory of David Bowie.
oh, that's amazing.
So sometime after that, Jay got in contact with me, and she said, "You'd be the ideal person to do a Queen version of this." So I said, "Yeah, count me in." And by that time, I'd got to know. I'd interviewed Jim for the website, Jim Jenkins, Queen's
Uh-huh, yes,
biographer,
yes.
and I did, and I was getting more and more in the fandom. I'm pretty late to the whole fan club thing, and I wish
Yeah,
I'd done it when I was younger.
mhm.
I absolutely love being amongst all the fans and everything. They're wonderful people.
Yes,
So
yes.
that the fans and Jim and Peter Straker and all that, just it kind of organically grew from there.
So you mentioned there that you do have interviews with Peter Straker, who is a longtime friend of Freddie. You have interviews with Tim Staffel, who
Yeah,
was in Smile. You have Jim Jenkins, you mentioned. How did you get in? And I know you have Peter Freestone in here. How
yeah.
did, like, Peter Freestone? I've met Peter Freestone myself. Lovely gentleman. But how did you get in contact with, like, Peter Straker and all those guys?
Um,
Did they
you know
send you
what?
essays, or were you able to, like, talk to them and all that stuff?
I interviewed Peter Straker, I think, initially because he was having his box set reissued, and if you haven't got his box set, you need that
Oh,
box set because
amazing.
oh man, it is a really cool album. You know, there's 3 albums in it actually, and anyone who's into like Queen, Sparks, Bowie, that glam rock era, you need that in your
I'm a
collection if
Sparks
you haven't
fan.
got it.
I'm a huge Sparks fan.
Yeah, he's just got all wonderful sort of different styles, and
Oh, I love
he's a
it.
great vocalist, very, very underrated. And he's one
Yes.
of those guys. I wish that there was more sort of spotlight on him, like a few of the
Mhm,
guys in the book, you know. But yeah, I can't remember how it came about, but I interviewed Peter, and then his niece was best friends with a girl called Alison that I went to primary school with.
mhm.
And it's like kind of like the 6 degrees of separation, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't think I'd be that closely sort of linked in a way to Peter Straker, but that was a bizarre coincidence. And then,
yeah. Oh, it's a
um,
small world for sure, right? Mhm,
yeah, and Peter Freestone was through a friend of mine called Karen,
mhm.
who's a big part of the fan club
Yeah,
fan scene. So
yeah,
she put me in touch with Peter, and Peter's lovely, you know.
yeah, very lovely guy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing 'cause, I enjoyed reading those stories, but I also just enjoyed reading, just like the normal everyday fan like myself or like my friends, like, it's just we all have these kind of similar, um, stories about how we came into Queen fandom. I particularly there was a guy that was talking about how the News of the World album, like, was it for him, and that was kind of where I came into Queen. Like you, I had older brothers, and I remember hearing Killer Queen on the radio. I remember hearing Bohemian Rhapsody on the radio, but it was just always it was just there.
yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't say I consider myself a big Queen fan at that time because that was just music that was playing around the house or playing on the radio at the time. And living in the United States, we had a different, Queen wasn't as big early on as they were. I mean, it took a little longer for us to know Queen living in the United States, right? But when the News of the World album came out, I related to that story because I was 11 years old. We used to go to a friend's house and play her brother's records when he wasn't home. And that album, the album cover, it scared me to death. I would look at it and it would scare me and I would open it up and you have the Frank the robot reaching in to grab the people and for some reason it scared me. But my
So it's like
friend she used to play that record. We would play that record over and over and over again, and I just remember going on the day after Christmas, and I that was the first album I ever bought with my own money, and it cracks me up every time I hear and then I saw, Stewie on that, show, A
funny
Family
guy.
Guy, when he did his thing of, like, how those album covers scared him, I'm like, "Did we all have that collective
I've just
response?"
tried to reach out for the album cover, and it's so slow in I can't find it. I've got about 3 copies here.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, anything
Yeah.
with Frank on it, I absolutely go for
Mm.
like, in fact, I think I'm wearing my News of the World earrings
Oh,
today,
very
like,
nice, very nice.
anything that has Frank on it, I gravitate to it, and I think it's because that was the first album that's kinda got me where that's where I consider when people ask me, how long have you been a Queen fan?" I said, "I consider myself a Queen fan in 1977 when I bought my very first Queen album." That's what I but yeah, I just love how you can kind of go through this book and you can connect with like just everyday friends, or you get to hear from people that really knew the band. What is your favorite story that you've heard about Queen or talked to, maybe in this book,
Um,
or maybe not in this book?
that's a very difficult question because there are so many great stories in that book. I mean, there's other than my own, there's 2 that are quite sort of personal to me. John Fowler, who's like my best friend since primary school,
Mhm.
because we kind of grew up together, and it was that age before the internet where you didn't know what was out. You would
Right.
go to the different record shops and you would find rare stuff. You would find bootlegs. You would find guest appearances on other people's records and all that. And it was magical in a way. And sort of met up one day after we'd left primary school and was at different high schools, and we spoke on a field, a playing field about, oh, you are you into Queen? And we started swapping videos,
Yeah.
and we'd regularly phone each other up and guess what I've got, that kind of thing. Or you'd tape something off the TV in the middle of the
Yeah.
night that was rare. And we had
That's
kind
what
of had that.
that's what I was gonna say. We used to, like, listen for the wait to come on the radio, and then you have the tape ready, you hit the button, you know?
So the slightest little thing, if Queen were on an advert or something like that, but then as we got older, we went to the Freddie Mercury tribute concert together.
Yes.
We saw Brian and Rogers solo loads of times, the Paul Rogers thing,
Yeah.
and now we go to the fan club convention together. So his story is quite personal to me. And also, there's a lady called Denise.
Uh-huh.
Now, Denise lives in Bolton, and she's a real Bolton's near Manchester for people who
Mhm.
don't know. And she's kind of like a real pillar of the community. She really helps a lot of people, and she's won awards and stuff. And throughout lockdown, she was a real gem, helping lots of people.
That's so
And
sweet.
in the 90s, she was a massive Queen fan, and she was massively affected when Freddie died.
Mhm.
So she put on these parties that were kind of tribute to Freddie's parties,
Yeah.
kind of like that decadence, but on a budget, if you like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
not on Freddie's budget.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Listen,
yeah,
I saw the Sotheby's receipts. Like, I saw the receipt at Sotheby's. They had one of his party, and they had all the receipts for all the alcoholic things. It was very funny.
but
Mhm.
myself and John went to these parties, and they were magnificent. I mean, she would pick a song as the theme for the party. So she had like Seaside Rendezvous, and
Oh,
people
that's
were there in bathing costumes, and they had a Punch and Judy man, and oh, did you go out and do nice food, and everything was very themed, and they'd have live acts, and then it was a Queen disco all night, and a little stall selling rare Queen records and things like that. The amount of effort that she put into those parties was unreal, and all the money went to HIV/AIDS charities.
that's nice. I love that.
And I think in the end, she ended up funding a HIV/AIDS, uh, a bed in Bolton Hospital for HIV/AIDS patients,
That's
which is
wonderful.
remarkable.
Yeah, that is wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's wonderful. Yeah, because I remember, when Freddie died, I was here. I've lived kind of all over, but I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now, but I left Atlanta for a real I went to school here, and then I moved to New York City for 20 years. And, but I was living in Atlanta. I was in college when Freddie died, and I was working for Aid Atlanta. I was a volunteer. I'd go every day after class, and I'd go and I worked at Aid Atlanta and working with these patients and taking food in and doing education for people on how to be safe and what to do, make advocate, get people to be tested because at that time it was people didn't want to test, they were scared, so I was doing
Mhm.
all these things for HIV. And the funny thing was with Freddie is I didn't I think when I saw Freddie in Headlong, the video for Headlong, that was the first time I ever thought, "Is he ill?" Because he just looked really thin, and he was always a thin guy, but I just felt like it looked something just didn't look right, and then, of course, but it was so funny until the day he died, when it was announced that he died, I didn't even think about him having HIV or AIDS. I don't know why, because I was working with people that had HIV and AIDS, and I just remember I was on my way to class, driving in the car, and I was listening to the radio, and the radio announcer came on and said that Freddie Mercury had died, and I literally was just stopped in my tracks. And then when he said he died of AIDS, I just busted into tears crying, and I because I knew working with people how horribly people suffered with that disease. And, so anytime anyone like, I just have this real affinity towards, people that do things for that community because, that's a wonderful thing that she was doing, and especially at that time when it was such a stigma, and, so, yeah, that's wonderful. That is really wonderful.
I mean, I think people tend to forget now that it was a stigma at the time. And it was a bit like the pandemic in a way. People were
Exactly
frightened.
right. That's right.
They weren't quite sure how you could get it because it hadn't
Right.
been around long enough.
Right.
And I'm hetero, and even as a schoolboy, thinking, well, am I going to get this when I'm older, kissing girls, or
Yeah.
silly,
You
silly
don't
stuff
know.
like that at the time.
Yeah.
People didn't know,
Yeah.
and
A
there
lot
was
of
a
the a
lot of
lot of that came out of fear. A lot of
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
stigma came out of just fear for that, right? Um, then a lot of it came out of real bigotry when, burning people's houses down and stuff is not
Well,
fearful.
the
That's
press were awful here. The
right.
press were
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
But I
you
wanted
say
to touch on that
sorry.
because part of this book, you said that all the profits go to the Mercury Phoenix Trust, which again, I think is a very noble and wonderful thing to do to put out a book and then donate profits to such a cause in which I think Freddie would be extremely proud of.
Well, it would feel. I think right from the start, it would have felt disingenuous of me, or I'm sure Jay feels the same. That it would have been disingenuous to take any money from this, as people have given up their time to do it. We were lucky that we grew up in the times when we had Freddie Mercury and
That's
David
right.
Bowie. What a
Yes.
time! What a time to be alive!
Well, I talk to people that are on my TikTok page because when I do my lives, that's when I'm interacting with a lot of the Queen fans, and a lot of them are younger, and they don't get like I'm like, you really do. We are very lucky that got to see these people. And when we talk about like the vinyl, that's why I was asking about the vinyl because we I think about the getting the records, like, we got to live in the time when we got to see the records, like, when they came out, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like you would wait for the next record. It's kinda like with a book. Yeah, I think about it like when the Harry Potter books came out, right? You'd get the first one, and then you had to wait for the next one. When's the next one coming out? But that's was what it was like with records, right? Okay, I can't wait. The new Queen, and they would come out, you'd go to the record store, you'd grab it, you open it up, and you could smell the vinyl. I mean, I still have all my records. I have all the records. It's just, um, but it's crazy to think that now, like everything, you can just stream it. And vinyl's coming back for sure. Everyone likes vinyl now too, but there, there's just nothing like waiting for that release to come out, waiting for that next record to come out. And yeah, it's so true. We're very
I
lucky.
miss waiting for the new Queen record, but it does occasionally still happen, like with Face It Alone. And
Yeah, that was amazing.
when that came out, they premiered it at the convention, and they have like a proper big sound system.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ballroom went absolutely quiet when they played it.
I bet it's
And
haunting. It's a very haunting sounding song too.
it sounded, honest to God, Angie, it sounded like Freddie was there. The
Uh,
hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was an incredible moment, that.
when they put out that single for Not Let Me In Your Heart Again, that one too, like, oh my God. But when they put out that single, that Dave Clark single of Time Waits for No
Yeah,
One,
yeah.
just with him on the piano, when I first heard that, heard it listened to through headphones, and I just sobbed at how beautiful it was. How beautiful his voice was, how just stunning, and then you just think about, like, we've been robbed, like, all
Yeah,
of these just
definitely.
amazing, like, David Bowie, Prince, Freddie Mercury, Amy Winehouse, like, all these just incredible artists, like, incredible singers,
John
just
Lennon, George Harrison.
George
Yeah.
Michael, like,
George
George
Michael, definitely, yeah.
Michael, I mean, my god, like, all of these amazing talents gone far too soon. It's like, well, okay. Any other last things you want to talk about the book about?
No, just thank you very much for supporting us, and thank you, and obviously it's not a lone effort. Jay Jen, as
Yes.
co-editor of this, she's had a lot to do with the book as well. The amazing cover was done by a guy called Jimmy Sangster.
Yeah,
Now
I
I've had
love it.
lots of feedback about the cover as well,
Yeah, it is
and
really great.
yeah, Jimmy, I don't know him.
I like the back
Um,
cover too. I like their pictures.
Jimmy is a friend of Jay's, I believe. I'm friends with Jimmy on Facebook, but he's had a lot to do with Doctor Who media. He's done cover art for some of the audio Doctor Who stuff, and he's a talking head on some of the Doctor Who DVDs as well.
Oh,
But
neat.
that's his talent, is that artwork. That's
I love
amazing.
it.
I love
Yes.
how he's got the sort of Marvel DC comic look, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. I really love that too, yeah. Very cool, yeah.
It's better than
Well
my idea that I had.
oh, that's why we leave it to the artist, like, right?
Yeah.
We leave the art to the artists. But well, David, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. I wish you all the success on this book.
Thank you very much,
And
Angie. Thanks
guys,
for
again, you can find
supporting.
In the Lap of the Gods on Amazon. And I bought it on Amazon in the US. So if you are in the States, pick it up. A lot of great stories to be told about Queen and Queen fans. And it was just a great book. And we wish you all the success with it, David. So thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
and
for
thanks to
joining.
each and every contributor to the book as well.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely.